Hello, and welcome to Innovative Trauma Healing with Richard Fay, psychotherapist, and myself, Judith Richards. I'm the creator of TRTP, the Richards Trauma Process. It's great to have you join us. Richard, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm a psychotherapist, counsellor in private practice in Brisbane, and I discovered, to my joy, TRTP 5.5 years ago, and it's certainly transformed my practice and my clients' lives. 41 years of marriage and grandkids and kids and loving life.
On you, Richard. And I'm Judith Richards. As I said, I'm the creator of TRTP, the Richards Trauma Process, which I've been teaching for 11 years now. To practitioners mainly in Australia, but in other countries as well. And so today we're going to talk about TRTP, and we'll start with understanding the principles of TRTP. The model that I have for trauma is different. So let me just explain it in a moment, because to understand TRTP, we must understand how this model works for trauma. So let's just say you have a traumatic event or a distressing event. What happens? A lot of people will know this, but I'm just going to go over it and I'm going to show you how TRTP differs in the model. So the amygdala fires, the emergency services in the brain. That fires, we release adrenaline. The adrenaline races around the body through the circulation and shuts down those systems that are not required to sustain life for the next short period of time while we deal with this current challenge. So what are those systems? Some of them are the digestive system gets shut down. You don't need to digest breakfast when you're confronted with a tiger in front of you. The immune system gets dialed down because you can fight a bacterial infection later after you've found that you're not lunch. And the frontal lobe gets shut down. Part of that frontal lobe shut down is the hippocampus, which is largely responsible for long-term memory. And so the event is over. What happens? In a regulated system, the hippocampus does its job and puts that event in the right file, in the right filing cabinet in long-term memory and shuts the door firmly. It's over. I'm safe now. We can get on with what's next on the agenda. In a dysregulated system, a system that's been under too much stress and too much distress for too long, that doesn't happen. The hippocampus doesn't come fully back online and take that event and put it in long-term memory and firmly shut the door and it's over and I'm safe now. No. So what happens? Instead, in my model, that event is stored like a videotape loop in the unconscious. That event when I'm 3 and 7 and 4 and 16 and 32 and so it goes on. It's like the pressure in a balloon builds up and builds up until there's just too much pressure and it blows out. What happens then? We go into anxiety. We get stuck in fight, flight, freeze. We can go into anxiety, the hyper-aroused state, fast heart rate, respiration, etc., of fight and flight. Or we can go into the freeze state, shut down state, low heart rate, etc., of depression. If it's catastrophic events, well, we can go into PTSD. We can go into more serious physical or mental ill health. So a lot of modalities work with the conscious mind, but science has proven that the conscious mind works only 5% of the time. Can you imagine that? 5% of the day, your conscious mind is running things. 95% of the time, it's the unconscious. The unconscious runs every chemical reaction, every electrical event in the body. Thank goodness we don't have to think about it. The unconscious just keeps us going. And those events are stored in the unconscious, never brought to an end. And the body continues to respond because the unconscious drives the body. The body continues to respond as if that event and that event and that event and that event are happening now. Thus, we're in that heightened state of fight and flight or the shutdown state of freeze. So that's the model, and what we do with TRTP is we just turn off those videotape loops in the unconscious, wake up the hippocampus, the whole system comes online, not just the memories reprocessed, but it's like a complete physiological reboot. If you've ever done a factory reboot on the phone, you'll know what we're talking about. The whole physiology has changed because trauma brain changes function in absolutely predictable ways and over time changes structure. But the whole thing is taken back to balance. And we have found that we only have to turn off the top 3 most distressing events. We don't have to go through every event. And doing that, the symptoms of anxiety, depression, PTSD, whatever it is, simply disappear. We don't have to specifically focus on the anxiety and then the depression. No, it's just across the board. Turn off the cause and the symptoms disappear. So that is what TRTP does. Richard, any comments?
I was reflecting this morning that the memory of trauma is actually the experience of trauma, because it's not a memory. As far as the unconscious is concerned, it's an experience. And so when I recall it, like you might recall what you had for breakfast this morning, it doesn't come with information alone. It comes with all the affect in your body, in your emotions, in your experience of other people, even of places. Your whole world is defined by that memory. And so therefore, if the trauma is able to be correctly, as it should have been but never could be at the time it happened, stored in long-term memory, if it's over, it's finished and done, you'll still have recall of it, but only if you went searching for it. It will not interfere with your life. It won't show up. You won't have flashbacks, nightmares. You won't see every situation you experience as a threat. You won't need to medicate, self-medicate, alcohol, drugs, and the ways in which people self-medicate. That will just disappear. I use this example of someone who is shopping in a supermarket, and another shopper has an epileptic seizure and ends up on the ground having a seizure. And this person shopping, going down the aisle, sees the other shopper on the floor having a seizure and has this immediate affect. This always happens to me. Why does this always happen to me? Now, it's not happening to her. She's just doing her shopping. She's invited to care for this person, but she's feeling overwhelmed. She's feeling flooded. It seems callous and even narcissistic that she would have that response, except this tape loop is, I'm responsible for everything that goes wrong in the world. Blame me. I have to fix it, no matter what it is. And she's been probably doing that for decades. And so now someone having an epileptic seizure becomes overwhelming, because at the time she was blamed, possibly when she was much smaller, much younger, it was overwhelming. And because it's running in the unconscious, something external to her makes her feel flooded and overwhelmed. And she goes into some form of shutdown. For her, the shutdown could be distressed, overwhelmed, flooded, wanting to get out of that shopping center and having no regard for the poor person suffering on the ground. Now, this happens in so many ways, shapes, and forms. It can be the simple, oh yeah, that's right, that's what I get, that's what I get. How dare you? How dare you? This isn't fair. This never ever changes. All of the scripts that people have, I don't deserve any better, it's all I'm ever going to get. Some form of that. And they look benign because they're so commonplace. They're not benign, but they are infecting society at such a, and I can tell you why. They're infecting society because in the last 100 years, we've had 2 world wars and a depression and all the disconnection of technology and society. And we've lost the moorings and we need to find them again. And the only way we can be moored again is by recovering the younger self that is lost in what they thought was just my lot, but was actually trauma. And the beauty of TRTP is it does it safely, efficiently, lovingly, elegantly, and more importantly than anything, effectively.
Yeah.
In fact, I wanted to add that because I wouldn't do this work if it was a grind working with the worst things that ever happened to people. I'd want to quit now. If it wasn't safe and it wasn't effective and it wasn't efficient, I wouldn't want to do it. But most especially, it's loving.
Yes. Yes, it is. It is. And different from the work that you used to do pre-TRTP, Richard. Because when we met, you were ready to retire, to throw it all in.
I was.
Tell us about that.
Well, when you do this work over a long haul, as in over decades, what you do is you listen to pain. You listen to stories of humanity treating other humans at their worst. You hear endless stories of heartache and distress.
Yeah.
And you have tools, and they're supposed to work, and they do work wonderfully with the 5% that's conscious. So the client in my room.
When you say, just a second, 5% that's conscious, 5% of the people, or 5%? Can you just clarify 5%?
Well,
of what?
100% of the 5% is still only 5%. In other words, they get full comprehension of what I'm saying, and in my room, they feel regulated and calm. After spending an hour with me, they're going, great. Oh, thank you. This is going to be fantastic. They walk out the door, they get in the car, they turn on their phone, and there's an email from the boss or a phone message from their partner. And like that, they're back where they were. Yep. So the 95% overrides whatever the 5%, however effective the 5% is. That's what I'm saying. You can do the best cognitive behavioral work. You can have all the tools exposed. These are the tools that have been around. Cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, mindfulness. They're wonderful tools. Even effective memory reprocessing tools like EMDR are wonderfully effective tools, and they work. Somatic tools that help people connect with where it is in their body and to work with it. The tools that are most effective, the ones that I just mentioned there, the somatic tools and EMDR, wonderfully effective and evidence-based, but slow. When the trauma is complex and historic, they're slow. And clients don't want to, once they start seeing a therapist, there's only one reason they want to keep seeing a therapist, and it's a trauma bond. This person will hear my pain. Thank God I found somebody who'll care for me because I can't care for myself. And I will come endlessly to be cared for decades.
Yeah.
It's the only reason if anyone wants to go to therapy over the long haul.
Yep.
And that's not work I wanted to be doing in my 60s, let alone 50s. I wanted clients to get well.
Yes. Quickly. And to stay well.
And to stay well without me needing to keep like an old, the air mattress on a school camp that keeps deflating. I didn't want to be the pump.
Yeah.
It was working and then it stopped working. Help me. No, not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what are your experiences with your clients like, Richard?
I have the most wonderful privilege, and I would want to say, Judith, it's not the work you created, nor is it the work that I do. It's the courage my clients have to engage in it. And I have the most awesome, privileged experience of seeing clients going from near suicidal distress to celebrating life in the space of less than a month. It wouldn't matter what week you chose, but I told you yesterday, as I do because I tend to be rather enthusiastic, that I finished the 3-stage process of TRTP with a client just a couple of days ago, and they went from using metrics like the PCL5 or the DAS21, DAS42, we can give evidence to it that at the end of it, and a month later, and a year later, they're fine. He said to me, this client, I'm not really sure that this has had the impact I thought it might have, but I can tell you that everyone around me is treating me so much better. I don't. They're not being nasty to me anymore. Everyone's being kind to me all of a sudden. And then, of course, when I went through all the things that they didn't want in their life that had held them back for decades, I mean, for more than half a century, they were gone. Oh no! Oh no, that's not happening anymore. Oh no! Did I have that? Oh yes, I did, didn't I? Yeah, that's gone. I said to him, and I used this metaphor. I said, you know, when you bump into furniture, and a few days later you have a bruise, and you can't remember how you got the bruise because there was no psychological trauma to bumping into furniture. It's just ouch at the time, and you move on. The bruise is a physical trauma or a memory of the physical trauma, but you don't recall how it happened. So it is with psychological trauma. When it's gone, you have actually no experience of it. If you've got no experience of it, you have no memory of it. Therefore, it's like it never happened. This is the irony of this work, is that clients sometimes are dumbfounded that they were ever as bad as they're reported.
It's because one of the things that we do at the beginning of TRTP is give the client homework. And one of the parts of that homework is to write 2 lists from, I want to move away from this to this. So from list to this, like I want to move away from waking up dreading the day, for example. And so often we go back to that list in session 3 to make sure everything's done, and you tick it off. You go to tick it off. I even had a woman. I said, so how are those panic attacks going? She said, what panic attacks? I said, you have on your list that you wanted to go from having daily panic attacks to having none. And she said, show me that. That's not mine. That's not my list. And I had to go and show her the email. I had to go and show her my emails, find her email and show her and open it from there where she could see. Oh, yes, that's right.
So,
oh, no, I haven't had it. Isn't that? Oh, now I remember. Yes, I don't have it.
You see, they have recollection of it happening, but they have no experience of it. Therefore, it might as well have happened to somebody else. Or as you sometimes say, their worst event becomes a shopping list at the back, an old shopping list at the back of a sock drawer. It's irrelevant information. And it is quite extraordinary to see. So I say the homework then becomes like the bruise we have from something that happened in the past. Oh, where did I get that from? How did that happen?
Yeah. We so quickly forget how bad things were.
Because our bodies are the most honest and immediate expression of how we think, who we think we are, because we live in them. And we've been in them since before we were born. And so if trauma shows up in the body and there's no trauma, the body carries on with life. And so we can. It's like if you could imagine a distressed child grabbing you constantly and pulling you back into their distress. That's what trauma does. Constantly dragging you back into the worst moments of their life. And it's those moments that never got properly stored in long-term memory. And if you don't have something like TRTP, and I have trained in so many different approaches, and nothing comes within a barge pole of it. Nothing.
What other approaches have you trained in, Richard?
And I want to say many of them are very, very good approaches. Well, I first trained in narrative therapy, which is very helpful, especially with Indigenous people who have a narrative process. I've trained, as I mentioned, EMDR. I've trained in resource therapy, which I absolutely love, and internal family systems, both of them parts-based approaches. Very, very effective to work with parts that are stuck in a traumatic story. But with the whole person in a 3-week process, there's nothing like TRTP. I could keep naming many, many different therapies. But there is simply, to my experience, nothing like it. in its, and I do want to say this, it did require me to shift very quickly from picking some modality off my internal bookshelf and applying it in a situation to putting all of them aside for while I was working from beginning to end with a client and just doing TRTP. I had to throw myself in and trust the process, trust what I had been taught, and trust myself in it. And when I did that, it's a little bit like if if you got a pure glass of water and you put a drop of anything else in it, then you contaminate it. You're not going to drink a bottle of a glass of water with a drop of some virus in it, or a drop of fecal matter or something terrible in it. And I'm not suggesting these therapies are that, but they do pollute the process. So you put them aside while you're doing TRTP. And the reason, one, I was told to do it, so I did that. And then, of course, the advantage of it was at the end of the process, they didn't need any other modalities. They were, 93% of the time, that was it, done, finished. And the other 6 or 7% of the time usually was about giving them tools to be able to do life well now that they could, now that it was safe to do life well, how to choose healthy relationships, how to get back into society socially, how to trust back themselves in a job interview, and so on and so on. So
How
we
to
do a
put
lot
in,
of role playing.
yeah, how to put in boundaries.
Oh, most especially how to
What is
stand
a
up.
boundary?
A boundary, you say. One very common thing you'll hear with people who experience TRTP is, well, I like who I am, but my family say I've got a bit of an edge now. They can't have their way with me. They can't push me around anymore. They say I seem to be a bit more clear and solid and determined. I go, do they ever say you might seem a little bit edgy? They say, yeah, it's almost like I've grown testicles, even if they're women. And I go, yeah, because you have. That's a boundary. No, and it's not rigid. It's just clear. It's not brittle. It's not brittle. That's the key point. It's not brittle. You do this or else. It's not that at all.
No. It's I love you.
And therefore,
I love you. Yeah, I love you. And things have changed. Now I love me as well.
Yes. And I don't need you to love me for me to be okay, but I do need you to treat me with care and respect because I deserve it.
Exactly. And if you're not speaking to me with care and respect, I shall just remove myself.
Until you're
ready. Yeah.
And that can take a little bit of support sometimes post-process, but usually not much.
Yep. So how did you integrate TRTP into your practice as it was then, Richard?
So I had a lot of clients who I'd been seeing for many years, some of them. And I simply said to them one by one, you're bringing up something that you've shared before and it matters. And it doesn't sound as if it's shifted a lot. Is it possible that there's something stuck inside you that you're not to blame for, you're not the cause of, but you have to be responsible for because it's your life? And I notice, and this is something that my old supervisor said to me once, he said, Richard, notice your impotence therapeutically. In other words, no, you cannot change another person's life. You can only lead them. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink, as the old saying goes. And so I would say to them, you have to be responsible for your life because you're the only one who gets to live it. What if we could change all of that? I wear glasses. It allows me to see everything in focus. I see the world through these lenses. Trauma is an invisible lens through which the old saying, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. What if we could change the glasses within you so you could see yourself internally and therefore the world externally as it actually is. And they very quickly, I simply started being quite clear with them. I'd saying, I will listen to you, but I will keep challenging you. I will not give up challenging you. Do you want to change this, or do you want to talk about it? Do you want this to be different, or do you just need to keep revisiting this over and over? Very quickly, one by one, my clients became TRTP clients. And then I said to you, oh, Judith, there's a problem here. I will have no clients. I will not have any work. You are going to have me so effective, apparently, that I'm not going to have any work. I'm going to be out of a job. And you did more than what you did last day. You burst out laughing. Have you ever opened a newspaper? Have you ever gone online and read the news? Do you walk down the street and notice? Do you see the stickers outside supermarkets that say, we will not tolerate abuse? You know, those are there because of the level of trauma in our society.
Yeah.
When you walk into a shop and there's zero tolerance for abuse, it's because there is so much out there. People are just drowning in it. So my clients were booked out 2-3 weeks out down. Now they're booked out 4, 5, 6 months out. I'm taking appointments in September at the moment, and it's April. I honestly have often considered closing my books altogether, and I'd have enough that just comes in the door. Because the man I just told you about, well, it was a work colleague who told him about what he did with me because he'd got well, and there it is. So your word of mouth becomes, that's the best advertiser you'll ever get. Imagine just one client gets well. You know how many people they're going to demonstrate that verbally and otherwise?
And it's obvious when someone gets well. And people go, what's happened to you? Well, I want what she's having.
And you can't not. So while I do encourage people, if they feel comfortable, because usually once the trauma, you see the thing, when trauma's in the place, they don't want anyone knowing they're in therapy because they already feel like they're a piece of SHIT. So they feel like if anyone knew this about me, they'd hate me. Once their trauma's gone, they know it wasn't their fault and they've dealt with it. They want to tell the world.
Yeah. Yes. And more people come.
Yes.
And more people come. And that's what happened right at the beginning. When I created this out of my own need, desperate need to be well, when I had completely lost my mind. I was living in hallucinations and various personalities, and I was in a terrible way. And I was living in Mullaney, in the hinterland of the Sunshine Coast. And the kids called me MBL, Mad Beanie Lady, because I'd walk up and down the street talking 1,000 miles an hour, saying the same thing again and again, and I'd get lost and someone would take me home. I was very obviously that mad woman in the village. And people saw me quite quickly going from that to this, and they started bringing their loved ones to me. And I just put them through the steps that I'd gone through myself to get myself to wellness, and they'd get well. And so more people would come and more people would come. And then just letting people know where this came from. Then there was a professor coming to talk about trauma. I thought, how wonderful, I'm going to learn something. The poor gentleman ended up in hospital, and I was asked to take his place. I said, I don't present. They said, well, you do now. And at the end of that, people were lining up to learn, to learn. I said, I don't teach. So, well, you do now. And the psychiatrist in that first group, I thought I can take a dozen people and I'll reverse engineer what I'm doing and see how it goes. And the psychiatrist in that group very quickly cleared her books. So much so that the receptionists in the big medical centre where she worked sent a delegation to ask her, what are you prescribing? Is it legal? And I were implicated by being on the premises. What are you giving these people? Because we've been seeing some of them coming for a couple of decades and now they're walking out well. And she explained she was getting people off the pharmaceuticals. And you were engaged in some research lately, Richard.
Yes, and I'm very much looking forward to its full publication, but
so that we can talk about it then.
We can talk about it more freely. All we can say at this point in time is that it validates the anecdotal evidence of the practitioners of TRTP and the comprehensive experience of their clients. And it would be unethical for me to say any more until the research is published and its statistics are there to be explored and examined. And of course, this will lead to further research, which will involve randomized controlled trials and more, as all evidence-based research requires. But we've been waiting a long time for this because it didn't start, as you just described, within the ivory halls of some academic institution. We don't have time, and our clients sometimes said to me, I'll engage with it when you show me the research. And I said, fine, you can wait for it, and you just have to stay where you are until then, or find someone who can help you. But I'm only interested in people who want to get well now. Now the beauty is that we're going to have the therapists that are coming into the work now are going to have the advantage of research behind them, which we didn't. You were a pioneer, Judith, and I was somewhat one, but I didn't find I was leaping into the complete unknown because I tested this against attachment theory, tick. I tested this against psychodynamic theory, tick. I tested this against applied neuroscience, tick. I tested this against person-centered therapy, tick. It ticked every theoretical framework I had for good practice. And in fact, what it did is turbocharged it. It's like you've got the lid on the box, now you've got all the pieces to put together. That's what it felt like. I witness and facilitate secure attachment to adult to child in front of me. Literally watch it happen and experience the transformation. Gabor Mate says it beautifully. He said the two essential needs of every child is to be securely attached, without which we cannot survive. And the second is authentic expression. I am who I am, and who I am is good, and I get to be me, and I get to express who I am. And what I feel, what I think, what I say, what I do is good, or at least it has the right to be heard and seen and known and understood and valued. He said when those two realities are met, well, there is no trauma. Well, guess what TRTP does? It meets both criteria. Yeah. Authentic expression. I get to be me, and me is good. And I am securely attached, or my younger self is securely attached to me. As I've said to you, and you might have heard if you've watched this webinar in the past, a webinar that I've been in the past, is that my last breath will, even if my family aren't with me, and I hope they will, but even if they're not, I will have the most wonderful companion that any human could ever have, which is my younger self. The boy I once was will come with me to the great unknown. And it was just 2 days ago that a client's bringing the photo of the boy to me. And he said, isn't he beautiful? Just yesterday, a client said to me, before, when you asked me to imagine the boy, I just had this black veil, like I couldn't see him. Now he comes with me everywhere. And he's my joy and delight. In fact, whatever I'm experiencing, I experience it more richly and deeply because he's with me.
Yes. And people ask, does this last? I was at the big shopping centre a little while ago, and coming down the wide hallway amongst the people was a man making a beeline at me with a big grin, looking like he knew me. And I was trying to find which file is he in.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling.
Where do I know him from? And he came up, gave me the biggest hug, and stood back and said, you probably don't remember me. My name is such and such. You worked with me 8-9 years ago. And every time I open my wallet, I think of you. And I said, oh dear, do you feel I overcharged you? And he said, oh no, I would have paid 10 times, 20 times that. Let me show you. And he brought out his wallet and opened it and had one of those little plastic windows in it. And there was a photo of the 8-year-old him. He said, that boy's safe with me. I've got him now and he's safe.
No one can harm him.
No one can harm him. And I take this boy with me everywhere. At the end of my days, I'll take him home. It's just so good.
Look, it gets a little nutty when woo-woo, I dare say, when you started telling me that when you engage in TRTP, if you carry those autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia, lupus, chronic fatigue, and IBS, and a million other things, that those conditions can become completely asymptomatic. But being willing to dive in, I did, and I see those results. Clients become completely asymptomatic through this process. And I want to say one more thing, and that is that the best part about TRTP is not what my clients experience, as good as that is. It's that every time I engage in the process with a client, I benefit. It reinforces it in me. Why? Because to do this work well, to do this work effectively, you need to be congruently experiencing it yourself. That is a requirement of this process. You might go, oh gosh, what do I have to do? Well, no, you just have to engage in the process yourself. The more you do, the more you benefit from it.
Thanks, Richard. And what do you see as the main difference between TRTP and other modalities, other processes?
Yes, that's the question. I actually have come to believe that most approaches to trauma are cruel.
Yep.
They're cruel because they set the client up to fail. If you put a 5-year-old in a gym and asked it to push around the weights that an adult is lifting, that little child is going to injure themselves. That client is going to feel like a failure. That client is going to struggle endlessly. That child is going to walk out of that gym feeling utterly humiliated. And the personal trainer is saying, come on, what's wrong with you? That's why it's cruel. Exposure therapy. You have to put the person back in the context of the trauma and help them self-regulate in the midst of that trauma. While they're hyperventilating, while their whole physiology, their whole electrical system is shutting down, they're getting flooded, they want to run for the hills, but they're supposed to stay in that situation. Even titrating it, which is where a therapist goes with the client inch by inch by inch, slowly over a period of months or longer. The client is in torture. And the client is supposed to think this is going to help me. Cognitive therapies are no better because they get the client to think differently. And if, as I said, if the 5% is conscious,
5% is the conscious mind.
Then the 95% that's running every other single thing, it's not running them very well if it's trying to run the emotional, psychological, relational, spiritual realities, mental realities as well. It's rattled. It's disoriented. It becomes distressing. So to put a person through those processes is cruel, in my opinion, because it doesn't work. And it's like asking a 5-year-old to lift heavy weights, because it is usually the 5-year-old or 10-year-old or 15-year-old who knows so little about life except that I must be to blame for all of this. I'm bad. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. Of course they're not, because they weren't. And no one can help them when they're trapped in the unconscious. And clients say consciously, I know this isn't happening. I know this is years ago. Why does my body feel like? Why does it when my boss sends me a message, I need to have a word with you? Is there a knife in my stomach? Why? Come, I need to have a word with you, son, daughter. You're in trouble. You're going to cop it now.
Yep.
There it is.
So we're not just responding to what's happening here in front of us. what's happening in front of us turns on all those videotape loops, and we're reacting to that event and that event and that event and that event and that event, not to just here now.
And this is how it works out. It's not safe to be seen or heard. Why? Because if I'm seen, dad's going to or mum's going to launch at me, or the teacher, or whatever it is. So the boss wants to have a word with me. I go into the boss's office. The boss sees me anxious, stuttering, not able to think straight, not able to answer the boss's questions. The boss doesn't give me the raise they were planning to give me. They were inviting me into the office because they wanted to affirm my work product and said, I think I'm going to give you a bonus, a raise. I'm going to give you more opportunity here. But instead, you're now fumbling around because you believe that you're in trouble, because any word the boss wants to have with you must be bad.
Yeah.
Because you see, this biology is prey, and it keeps us alive. That's the most important thing. We are not sharks or crocodiles. We are not apex predators. We are prey. We're very clever prey. We can build weapons that can kill apex predators, but we are not. We are prey. Therefore, our physiology is oriented towards survival. And especially when we start out the world small. And as they say, it's the child that parents the adult because the child came first. And what TRTP does is reverse it, whereas the adult parents the child. But in order to do so, the adult needs to discover who they actually are. And TRTP does it in that order.
Yes. And we work with the trauma where the trauma is stored in the unconscious. And so it makes sense to speak to the unconscious in the language of the unconscious. And with just 2 words, we can access the unconscious. We go straight into the unconscious. 2 words, just imagine. And with those 2 words, the critical facility steps aside and we can imagine whatever we want. We step a client through various imaginary scenarios. Say to a client, the richer you make your internal experience, the more profound will be your outcome. Just be there. So we step into that world. And the funny thing is that as humans, the body and the unconscious believes what we richly imagine, absolutely believes it's happening. So if you imagine a lemon wedge, very drippy, and it's so sour, and there's so much juice, my body is responding as if I really have a lemon wedge. And this is how some people imagine away tumors and disease states. The body and the unconscious believes what we richly imagine. So we use this wonderful facility. So the person has a full body experience, an experience encompassing all of who they are, where we move them to a place of empowerment, and I know who I am. We turn off those videotape loops, and everything changes. And it lasts.
And it lasts. As the client I told you, as he was sharing with me about the boy, he did this process 2 years ago. It's 2 years later. And it's getting richer, actually. It doesn't just last, it gets richer. It opens up. It's a discovery. And I've had clients in their 70s. And one of the biggest things that people in their 70s have is a regret. As I said to you when I trained, why didn't I know this? Where was this 10, 15, 20 years ago when I needed it? She said, I did too. I didn't know about it till more recently. We live in the age when, it's strange, I think it's when the world most needs it that it comes, and it's here. And so clients get a richer and richer experience of life. They do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's Pollyanna. I want to say that it's not like everything comes up roses, because people die, animals die, children leave home.
Life happens.
Life happens. And the beauty of TRTP is that you can experience all of life richly. My dog died 2 years ago of 20 years, and I wept and grieved more richly than I can ever remember grieving in my life. And it was bitter and beautiful. Bitter because it's grief, and beautiful because it's all about love.
Yeah.
And I was now free to able to fully dive into that pool of grief and let it do its work in me without holding any of it back. And I would argue that TRTP gave me the capacity I'm more than I will ever be called upon to be. So whatever is happening to me, I can experience richly and wondrously, even the things that are painful.
Yes. Yes. And the resilience is extraordinary. That we can
Well, resilience is an interesting word, because resilience can sound like, well, Judith, you just have to toughen up, endure this.
Yeah, it's a very different experience with TRTP. It's this capacity to experience. Capacity to experience. Thanks.
So it looks to others like a resilience, like they look at you and go, oh, you're very resilient. But for you, the experience is, no, I just have a capacity to live this, not endure it, but live it and benefit from what I am experiencing, so that it becomes, even the shit in my life becomes fertilizer.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. And if anyone is watching this and wants to type in a question, now is the time. And if we get some questions, we'll answer those, but otherwise we'll just keep going.
Happily so.
Yes. Richard, you told me a story about, I think it was at Royal Brisbane, you were volunteering or something at the alcoholism unit there.
Yes. The Hurston Alcohol and Drug Service HADS in part of Royal Brisbane Hospital, where patients go to detox when they are trying to become sober for whatever they're addicted to.
Yes. And you met a gentleman there who told you about his extraordinarily tragic life.
Yes.
Tell us about
that. Well, man in his 40s, and to protect his confidentiality, I won't share too much detail, except to say his story made complete sense when he had been treated so terribly right through his childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood, to the point that, of course, he was medicating that trauma with drugs, which, of course, then meant that he was involved in crime because of the access to the drugs required that, which involved incarceration and so on. But what happened is, everyone who'd got involved in his life at a psychological level, and we're talking about, and I'm not wanting to bag them here, but within the system, clinical psychiatrists, doctors, social workers, the works, had pathologized his behavior as aberrant and dangerous and needing reform. But no one ever bothered to actually understand him. So when I listened to him and I honored him, I said, thank you for trusting me with your story. He wept and said, there he was at 42 saying, you are the first person who has ever listened to my story. He'd been in and out of prison several times. First person who'd ever listened to his story. And as you rightly said, everyone needs to have their trauma heard and believed, but only ideally once. Because once that person has heard and believed them, and there's a trusting connection bond there, you can then change the story. Now, I would walk over broken glass if I could tell this man about TRTP. I did not know about it when I heard his story.
And you were brokenhearted.
Oh, because I felt so powerless. Because there's a word I heard years ago. We as therapists need to move from pathology to mythology. Pathology, what's wrong with you? Mythology, how did you make meaning in those experiences? They're the unconscious beliefs that people carry, the tape loops. That's the mythology that's broken. The narrative doesn't fit the truth of who they are. The truth of who they are is unchangeable and impenetrable, even if they never know it or experience it. Everyone is worthy of care and respect, every human being. Everyone matters. Everyone. But the only person who can own it is themselves. And usually it requires the support of a therapist, and I argue a TRTP therapist, to introduce people to that. So he had never known his truth. He had a small aha moment when he wept because he discovered something about himself. He deserved to be seen and heard.
Yes.
And he would not be judged. He would not be pathologized.
Yes.
I would say, of course, that's the meaning you made.
Yes. And in your powerlessness to help him, you say that you still look for him when you go out in the streets. Say, hey, I can help you now.
I can. In fact, because of the congruity of his tears and his life story and his desire to be sober, not be prodded and poked and pathologized by endless specialists, but to be healed. To be healed. Oh yes. If ever that man, I had a chance to hear his story again, then I would engage with him, or any therapist did.
And the thing is with TRTP, we can say, hand on heart, absolutely knowing to a client, I've got you and you're safe. I get it and I've got you and I know exactly what to do to take you step by step by the hand to the other side of your pain. Come with me. Because we know what's going to happen. As long as the other person throws themselves in with all that they are.
And we have a process for that too.
Yes.
Because we test their readiness by their capacity to choose, their willingness to choose, their desire to choose. We do not start until we have assessed that, because trust me, and the process is so simple yet so elegant that I doubted it at first until I saw the client's anger, their tears, their empowerment, even their laughter, as they threw themselves heart, soul, mind, body, and strength into this.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some messages coming in here. Suzanne, I have an ex-military client who has had PTSD for 40 years and up until now has never sought help. Severe dysfunction. He can't work, can't sleep, always fearful, heavy drinking. Of course he's drinking. He's now going through the DVA process and is very negative about ever healing. Feel I need more skills to help him. Suzanne, come and join us.
Oh, yes. Because I want to say to Suzanne, your client is paralyzed by fear because the PTSD is a terrifying event happening over and over. And if they're terrified by their fear of that event continuing to happen, the last thing they want to do is go anywhere near it. So here we are 40 years later.
I didn't like it the first time. Don't take me back there again.
And anytime I talk to anyone about it, I know what you're going to do. You're going to engage me in it, and I want to run for the hills. So what did you say, Judith, just a couple of minutes ago? I've got you, and it's safe. It's going to be, you're safe, and it's going to be safe for you. Exactly. All the way through this. I will not leave you alone in this. I'm coming with you on this journey, and every step of the process is safe.
Yes. And yeah, so much I can say, but he's in fear because of those videotape loops are running in his life. That and that and that and that and that are all happening now. And he's in terror. Of course he is. And so we don't talk and talk and talk. We actually get the client to do homework to list the top 10 to 12 most distressing events in their life, just the age they were, the name of the event and who was there. No story, no essay. And that gives us a snapshot of that person's life. It shows us the pattern. It gives us so much information. And that's all we need. We might have to, if I ask a question, it may be in just 2 sentences. Can you just give me this information? And I say, not because I don't care, it's because I really care. Let's not talk, let's do. Let's reset your whole being. Take all this distress away. Jane says, I've come in late here. How does TRTP work? Yes. Thanks, Lisa. A recording of this will be made available. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jane. Thanks for looking after that, Lisa. It's
the thing I wanted to say also about it is that while it's only a very brief mention in their homework, we don't even go towards it until we're ready to work on it within minutes. And when we go to work on it, they're not going to re-experience it. That's really, really important. That would be traumatic, and I wouldn't do the work. In fact, I think I told you when I did my master's in counseling, I decided I would never become a trauma therapist because I didn't want to go anywhere near my own trauma, not consciously aware that my own trauma was why I was terrified of other clients' traumas. And then, of course, I discovered that everything that manifests in clients' lives that causes them to come to a therapist is trauma.
Anxiety, depression. Why do I have anxiety? Because I'm stuck in fight and flight, because my body, my whole being is behaving as if all these events are happening now. Why am I stuck in depression? Why? And you just it's all symptoms.
Relationship dysfunction. Oh, there we go. Relationship dysfunction, addiction, unprocessed grief that just gets stuck inside people. All the addictions of overspending and so on. I mean, it's endless, the kinds of things that trauma manifests as. Yeah. Imposter syndrome, perfectionism. And
all symptoms of the same thing. All this stuff going on in the unconscious, where the trauma is stored instead of long-term memory, so that everything is in us is reacting as if that's happening now. Turn off that, and the symptoms, whatever they are, just simply disappear. It's pretty simple, really. Pretty simple. And on that note, Richard, we might wrap it up. Thanks for joining me today. It's always a delight to hang out with you, Richard.
Always good to talk about what brings life to people's lives and healing.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time. In fact, next week on Thursday, 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, I will be in conversation with Dr. Beth Dupree, who's a multi-award-winning breast cancer surgeon from the United States, who sends her clients, her patients, her cancer patients, to do TRTP, to deal with their trauma, because so often that's what's behind their illness. So come and join us, hear from Beth, who's a powerhouse, next week, which will be Thursday, the 24th of April, 2025. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.